Welcome to Plain Talk, and there's a lot to talk about. What's that quote about? There's some decades where weeks happen, and some weeks where decades happen. I'm probably butchering the quote, but that kind of what it feels like. We had an attempted assassination, which was an awful, awful moment for our country. Terrible, scary. It's hard to put into words what a moment that was. And we have an incumbent president who is under siege in his own party because there's a lot of people who think that maybe he's not. I mean, there are some Democrats who are publicly on the record who think he ought to resign now and hand the presidency over to Vice President Kamala Harris. So that's going on. We have, obviously a shift in the Republican Party. Anyway, we're going to talk about all that right now with North Dakota Republican Party Chair Sandi Sanford, who is currently in Milwaukee at the beating heart of the Republican Party's of the Republican Party right now at this moment. It's all in Milwaukee. Sandi, how you doing?
Well, I'm doing fine. In fact, I'm not entirely sure what day it is. I believe I came here after the 4th of July to Milwaukee. What's the date? I don't know. I'm on week 2. I've been here around 11 or 12 days. I guess my family, but how am I doing? Hey, it's Republicans coming together from all across the country. There's a lot of excitement, and it's been a lot of fun. Truly, it's been a great honor to be here representing the state of North Dakota.
Hey, Sandi, can you talk a little bit about the delegation that's down there with you? How many folks are part of the delegation? What do you guys do from day to day? Sort of give people a feel of what happens at a national convention.
Yeah, well, in the state of North Dakota, as people that know the Republican rules, we have 29 delegates that go to nationals and represent our state. 3 of those delegates are automatics. That would be the RNC members. So that would be your Republican state chair, who is myself, and then your national committee man, Shane Gettle, and your national committee woman, Lori Hins. So there's 26 that have to get voted in at our state convention, and we had that April 6th and 7th in Fargo, and everybody knows, how that went. And so, we had a slate, and that was voted in, and 29 represents the state of North Dakota. Then we also have alternates, because, of course, anything can happen as you drive up to that date. I mean, the delegates that attend this, they have to pay. They have to pay. I mean, it's not cheap to want to represent. I mean, it's not just like this is a free, week in Milwaukee on this NDGOP. No, it is self-funded, so it's expensive. So we do have alternates, and we like to see 29 alternates. Well, sorry, 26, because those 3 of us that are RNC, we can't be replaced. And then we have guests. We have a list of guests that, I brought a few guests. And, what represents a guest? Well, it's somebody who has been good to the GOP, has been a friend to the GOP, and has just, anybody can be our guest.
What's it been like down there? I mean, obviously, anytime there's a national convention, it's exciting, right? I mean, they're even setting the politics of the moment aside. It's kind of fun. I mean, I've always enjoyed going to, even though I don't like big crowds and stuff, which is kind of what brought up this question is what's it like right now in terms of security and everything? Because somebody just took a shot at the president of the United States. So has it been like real tough? And even like your time there's kind of straddled that event. Did security get beefed up? I mean, what's that been like?
Oh, heck yeah, it did. The security plan prior to Saturday changed drastically. Immediately. There's always a plan, and there's high security, but yeah, we're seeing it. I have to be honest. This is my first national convention. I was a delegate in 2020, and I've been part of the party, and but I have not been a person that has been big on the national level in attending something like this. This is my first national convention. We want the delegates to attend this, and the alternates and the guests to have a wonderful time. We want them to feel like, again, you're a party in your state, but man, when you come into this huge, incredible facility, it is exciting. It just lifts you up. And you just said you don't like crowds. Well, man, it's hard to walk into this and not have your heart almost jump outside of your body. I mean, just for a second. And, wonderful presentations. And you're with like-minded people and you realize this is nationwide. It's not just within your state or your community. So it's pretty incredible. And I'm really enjoying it.
So Sandy, how did your delegation respond to the news about Doug Burgum not being the choice for vice president? Was there a sense of relief? Was there a sense of disappointment? I suppose it's a 26 people, 26 different opinions on it. So, but overall, how do you think your delegation sort of responded to that news?
Right. So attending in all, I have around 67 people here from the state of North Dakota with us. But yes, my delegation specifically, people know, what we're dealing with in the state of North Dakota with different factions. You can take that again. I always talk about the big tent, and I get it. And we've got, the right and the left. We do have a far right faction in let's just call it grassroots. I have a grassroots delegation. And I would say it's split. I would say some were just absolutely, hey, my delegation is really confident in President Trump and in his pick, regardless of who it is. And so some people, I would say in general, people were pretty, hey, who is it going to be? We heard it was down to 2 or 3, and then down to 2 with JD Vance and Burgum. But I'll tell you, there were people in my delegation who would have been absolutely thrilled and honored, and regardless of who is a VP pick with party, I don't care who it is. If we have a person from North Dakota that potentially could be a vice president, I'm going to be honored. That is going to be incredible. That a person, a child, a kid that grows up can be a governor and end up a vice president or president. That is incredible to me. And I just think it's an incredible honor for me and for our state and for our party.
The joke we like to tell on the podcast is that North Dakota is a place where if somebody ends up on like a reality show or a game show or something, we're like interviewing them and doing headlines and stuff. We like it when North Dakotans go out into the world and kind of do cool things. And obviously, being second in line to the most powerful elected office in the world is a really big deal. It's been interesting. Yeah. Some of the headlines I've seen, in particular last night, and it really seemed the focus was on unity. And you saw some of former President Trump's rivals during the primary process get up and endorse him. Governor Ron DeSantis, former Ambassador Nikki Haley, and others. And so it's interesting though, like the unity. I mean, the party right now is Trump's party. I mean, his people are running the party and everything. So I'm not surprised that that's what they put forward. Do you feel like there's unity? Because you were talking about, there's factions here in North Dakota. It doesn't feel very unified at times. And maybe that'll change. A lot of times that you get a candidate and everybody kind of gets behind the candidate, and there's going to be a lot of that going on. But sometimes I wonder if this is sustainable. That the party has shifted. I'm not sure the Republicans stand for a lot of the things they used to stand for. For instance, taking, mentions of the national debt and deficit out of the party platform. At one time, it would seem unimaginable that Republicans would pass a platform without mentioning those issues. So I guess that's my question for you is I realize, and I realize your position too as party chair, you have a job to do, but is there unity? Is this a real thing, or is this just, is it kind of saying we're going to say there's unity so that hopefully there will be unity?
No, I think here at Nationals right now, I'm feeling unity. Again, on a national level, going into yes, you talked about Haley. Politics is tough, and nobody wants to lose. And so as we saw presidential debates leading up to Republican pick, it gets dicey. It can get cruel. It can, because everybody wants to be that choice. But at the end of the day, I was really happy to see Nikki Haley here. I have to, come on. Of course, she's a Republican. Get her here. Let's bring it together. I'm feeling unity. I'm feeling pretty strong in Republican crowd at Nationals. On a state level, of course, you do have the different factions. And on a state level, I tend to talk a lot about balance and stability, because I am going to acknowledge the fact in my state as the chair that there are different factions and we're in different places in the party. And as a chair and I'm an administrator right now. I'm not an activist. I have a job to do. I have a almost like a statewide organization to run. It's like having 50, on the state office, and I have 57 sites. My job is to manage all of the factions, to be respectful of everyone, regardless of where they sit. Again, back on a national level, yes, I feel like this is incredible that the Republican Party on a national level is unifying and getting behind one candidate. And I couldn't be more pleased about that.
It is sort of shocking on July 17th, 2024, when you look at the two national parties, that Republicans seem more unified right now than Democrats do on a national level. If you would have said a year ago that was going to be the case, I would have said, no way. It's crazy how things change. But the way you just described the job is super interesting to me. And I'm glad you came on the podcast today, because one of the things I've wanted to ask you is, so you referred to sort of the grassroots element of the Republican Party, which is where you came from and where you got sort of elected. So since you took this job, and I'm saying this from sort of an experience of watching it on the other side of the aisle, where there's people from the outside that are like, the party ought to do this, the party ought to do that. And then they get in and like, oh, now I sort of get it. What have you learned since becoming chairwoman of the GOP that maybe you didn't understand as an activist on the outside? Yeah.
Well, to be clear, I'm not necessarily grassroots. I mean, I've been part of district work for many, many years, and I'm not new to politics. I've been lobbying. I used to lobby for the American Association of Respiratory Care. I lobbied during the tobacco settlement, the Medicare reform, for the North Dakota. For respiratory issues in the 90s. Okay. So I'm not new to policy and lobbyist work. And I would have to tell you, when I won as a chair of the GOP, I went into that internal election of, it was a state committee that, again, I'm not an elected official. It was a state committee who elected me. And I went into that, maybe a little, people believed I was establishment. Again, my husband has been in politics in the state of North Dakota, an elected official for 18 years. He was lieutenant governor. So I think what happened, I went to this reorg meeting on June 14th of 23. To some, I was establishment, and I was voted in primarily by the far-right grassroots. I think what you're talking about in regards, and I love the grassroots. What does that mean to me? Grassroots is, hey, you know what? Grassroots is working down here and working at a local level. It's getting things done at a local level, and it's also inviting everybody to the table and like, hey, I don't have to agree with you, but let's come to the table. It's just opening the door and allowing everybody a voice. Those are the things that I believe in. I think it's become a little bit of a derogatory, idea, but much like we use this word rhino, establishment, far left. Rhino, I'm not going to talk about that. I don't want to use that word. Establishment has become derogatory. Why is that establishment? Establishment is the foundation of what makes any organization good. It's established, you're established, there's organization, there's decorum. I don't look at establishment as derogatory. I look at those people with the history. They've been here. They put the work in, man. They got the Republican Party to a supermajority. They have the institutional knowledge that a new grassrooter who's new to the process is so green. I mean, we're going to lose gifts and talents if we do not come together and respect the fact that we need to bring the institutional knowledge, we need to bring the new people in, and we need to come together. I would love for the new person to be teachable. Let's, and to be able to be mentored. And I'd love for my establishment to want to teach and mentor. I mean, that's the only thing that's going to bring stability. I use the word stability. My background is healthcare. I mean, I used to work side by side. I worked in Fargo and I worked in trauma and emergency room. I use the word stability and because I used to work side by side in the emergency room or in trauma next to a healthcare professional that, I may have worked with them for 5 or 10 years. And I didn't necessarily know everything about their life, but I knew that they knew their job and they had a job to do. and we would work side by side on patients, and I didn't have to agree, with that person all the time, but we knew our role, we knew our job, and we could work in a traumatic situation and stabilize patients. And that's kind of where I think in my head I kind of got that stabilize and balance. But when you ask me what I've learned, I don't know. My husband was funny when I think at 3 months, I was 90 days. Brett said to me, he goes, "Man, you're going through a meat grinder." He goes, "I've been in politics for 18 years. I've never seen anything like it, And he goes, "But you are the one that you know what you're doing. You can take it." But I have had times where I went, what did I do? Why did I do this? And those are the questions I've had to ask myself. And I know I'm doing a good job. I know that I can take, if I had activism, if I had an activist heart or a mission that I was on at one point, I'm professional. I know the administrative piece. I know the organization piece, and I know the job, and I can do it, and I'm executing it. And I've got a great team to help me. I've built it up, and we're doing good work.
Do you
I hope I answered your question, but
it's a big question, right? I mean, it's a big question.
A robust answer, and I apologize.
It is. And I do think that is one of the most interesting thing about politics is a lot of times when somebody from the activist class has, and I'm not necessarily meaning you per se, but I'm thinking like somebody from the activist class maybe gets elected to the legislature, and then they realize, okay, well, there was a reason why they were making these decisions, because if we just cut all the spending here, well, that has repercussions across the state, and you have to balance those things, and sometimes it's not as easy as it looks. Anyway, do you feel like one of the things that I'm really struggling with is it does seem like the Republican Party is changing, and I say that not as though I'm against change per se. I have long probably been to the left of most Republicans on social issues. I just am. I've described myself as a conservatively libertarian, I think is the term I've used in the past. So I mean, I like the idea of moderating on issues like same-sex marriage and that.
Robert.
All right, welcome back. I'm sorry if you heard a little glitch there in the audio. My connection went a little haywire there for a moment, but we're back. And the point I was trying to make is I'm not against change in the Republican Party, but does it worry you that we're taking things like the national debt and deficit out of the party platform? I mean, I'm really concerned about that, because I'm struggling with, well, what do we stand for then? What's the point of all this if fiscal discipline isn't at the center of it?
I know there's a lot of things on the platform that really that's. I mean, okay, so yeah, you're talking about fiscal responsibility and being fiscally conservative, and I mean, there was a lot of amendments to that platform that really stirred not just the middle, but the far right. I mean, there was some issues on some far right issues on the platform, abortion issues, things like that. So life issues. So I believe again, we're going into the general election. We're trying to flip a Democrat out. I believe on a national scale, they're trying to just pull in the middle. They're trying to. That's what Trump's team's trying to do. They're just really kind of sticking in the middle and going as far, pulling from both sides. And I think that's the optics there, and that's what we're seeing. As far as the platform, I was supportive of the work that they did on the platform. I just thought I'm just gonna hold tight, and it can always be changed later. But I'm very fiscally conservative. I'm very concerned about it personally. But yeah, on a national level, I mean, they're just going in and they want to win in November.
Just to follow up on that, you mentioned, we're trying to flip it. I think he's basically trying to beat a Democrat. But is beating Democrats enough? Because for me, it's sure, if you're a Republican, you want to beat Democrats, but why are we beating Democrats? Like, what's the point? Why do we want Republicans to hold office if not fiscal discipline and some of these other things?
Well, I think as a Republican myself, and I know, I mean, again, we're on a national level. I mean, I'm ready for Biden to be done. I'm ready for the Democratic Party to be done, and I want a Republican in office. I mean, I'm looking at regulation. I'm looking at everything. I'm looking at overreach, and I think as a Republican, I mean, we've had enough of that. liberal social agenda. And that's what that's where they're at.
Sandi, one of the guests you had at your caucus yesterday that was posted online by the state GOP and also some district GOPs as well was a guy named Matt Schlapp, who's the chairman of the Conservative Political Action Committee. The same Matt Schlapp that 4 months ago paid a staff person $500,000 who accused him of sexually harassing him and groping him during the Herschel Walker campaign. I continue to be a little bit baffled when these sort of folks who, I mean, you don't pay $500,000 to somebody unless you think you did something wrong, continue to be embraced and sort of lifted up. I mean, we've got the Holmberg situation here. We've got all kinds of different stuff. Can you help me understand why the North Dakota GOP would have invited somebody who paid $500,000 just 4 months ago to somebody for being a male staffer?
You know, our delegation wanted to hear from CPAC, and he has, he speaks with his wife. She's also one of the presenters, and she speaks on life, and my delegation is very, very pro-life. And so, you know, he was on kind of a circle, and we delegations, GOPs share speakers. And so on every given day, we have a program here, and there's a speaker that might hit 4 or 5 or 6 GOPs. And we were just part of that speaking circle or engagement. And so they stopped in, they did a presentation, and they spoke on CPAC. But to your point, Chad, you're right. You're right when you mentioned an issue in North Dakota. I mean, we cannot allow. I mean, there is bad behavior, illegal behavior, and things that just do not resonate with the Republican Party. And we have to be speaking out about it. I have not made a statement in regards to the issue in North Dakota, but we'll see what happens, and you will be hearing a strong statement from me representing the GOP. I do not personally. I personally, I'm from Western North Dakota. I saw human trafficking issues in the state of North Dakota. It's close to my heart. I worked with the North Dakota Human Trafficking Task Force. I started human trafficking. I mean, no, this is not okay. This is not okay for these things to happen. But I will tell you, there's bad actors and there's immorality in all parties, in both parties.
No, for sure. For sure. But I guess my confusion on is Matt Schlapp. Essentially, I mean, it's great he was part of the speakers.
Yeah,
I would be part of the national speakers. If, on one hand, we're out here in the state fighting, saying there's bad stuff in libraries and all that other stuff, but then your delegation is welcoming in somebody who literally paid $500,000 to somebody he allegedly groped. I mean, there seems to be a disconnect, and we're all guilty of hypocrisy when it comes to disconnection between our worlds. And so I think sometimes, we need to talk this stuff through. How can we be critical of other people when y'all are bringing him in to be a speaker on life and other moral issues to your delegation? I just don't get it.
I know. Well, I'll tell you what, I'll let the legality, run its course. And, I'm not going to assume, I don't know. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of false narratives about people. I'm not going to assume anything unless I know for sure. That's you asked me a couple minutes ago, what have you learned? I've learned to be careful and to get facts and to not just assume I understand scenarios. That is the biggest deal here. I mean, I wait for real information and facts to disclose themselves. And I'm not going to get too far in front of my skis on anything. If somebody's representing an organization and the organization has a strong mission, my delegation wants to hear about that. That is what we're there to do. I sometimes can take the person, put it on a shelf, and let's just kind of let that go. But yeah, that's what they wanted to hear. They wanted to hear from CPAC. But good answer. Thanks for asking.
And I mean, on the other side of the scale, Bob Menendez is somehow still in the United States Senate. So
yeah, throw him out.
Yeah,
throw him out.
I agree.
He's not welcome. Get him out.
Speaking of which, they could expel him, right? I mean, I saw that Majority Leader Schumer called on him to resign. Why do that? I mean, why take that step? He's not going to resign. Expel him.
This feels like a really great conversation for us to have after.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I was going to take a step.
You get the wrong person, get the wrong person, and you just get Hoban on, you Senator Hoban on here, Senator Kramer, and Representative Armstrong, and just let her go, let her butt.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
So Sandi, coming home, I mean, do you? I mean, obviously, in North Dakota, I mean, and no offense to our Democratic fans, it kind of feels like the election cycle's over a little bit. I just wrote about. I know the Democratic candidates put up some pretty decent fundraising numbers. The federal candidates, Katrina Christensen, but I mean, they're so far behind the Republican incumbents. So, I mean, what's the? I mean, after you come home from the national convention, what's the agenda for the rest of this election year?
I'm still all hands on deck. We have a lot of work to do. I mean, I've been the chair for just over a year, and I've just built my team. But we're going into the generals, and we want to. We really want to just go strong and just really walk alongside Kelly Armstrong. He's going to be the next governor of North Dakota, no doubt. And so we want to just walk really closely with him and just, again, continue to balance and stabilize and grow and strengthen the Republican Party in the state of North Dakota. But day-to-day operationally, man, I'm busy. I mean, this is a full-time job for me, full-time, and it's not out of the ordinary for me to be working, 50, 60 hours a week.
Well, just a couple minutes left. So if the message of this convention is unity among Republicans, how do we achieve that here at home? How do we bring some of those factions together? Looking at the primary we just came through, it's going to be tough finding some unity. I mean, there's some pretty hard feelings out there.
There are hard feelings out there, and that's just life. I mean, it's life. You're not going to get everything that you want, and but you have to come to the table. People have to be willing to talk about it. Hey, this is the first time I've been on your show. You've done a lot. You've danced around me for about a year. It's been fun. Where I'm happy to.
Well, I haven't seen it. I've asked you to come on before.
You have, and this is a very appropriate time. But I will tell you, people have to be able to talk. We have to be able to come, and that's what I'm seeing in regards to when you don't make progress. It's because people say, you know what, you do not agree with me, so I'm gonna not like you. How realistic is that? I mean, we all have different factions in our own families. We have different parties in our own families. I mean, North Dakota is a state about, even my Democratic friends are somewhat conservative, and my Democratic sisters, and I have, come on. I mean, what do we want in North Dakota? We want a North Dakota life, and we all believe in family values, truly. So, but we have to be able to talk about differences, and we have to get better at it. So that's what I do in the party is I make the connection. I try to bring people together. I want them to talk to me. I want to know what their grievances are. I'm not concerned if somebody doesn't agree with me, and I'm not afraid to have that conversation across the table. I want to know what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right. And I want to be better, and I want to do better. And that's what's going to help the organization as a party. And that's where I'm at. But I'm bringing people together, and that's what I'll continue to do for the next year.
Sandi, I know Rob is trying to wrap it up, and I'm going to ask you one more question. The state convention, and then going into the June primary, obviously the GOP endorsed candidate for Congress took a distant fourth place.
Wow.
The GOP letter of support for DPI took a distant third place.
Yep.
What is the sort of purpose of state conventions moving forward? Do you have to look at them differently? I mean, it feels like this one didn't matter as much as previous conventions. And what kind of thinking are you all doing on what that looks like moving forward? Absolutely.
We're doing a lot of thinking. In fact, you're right. I mean, we have to look at, how are we going to stay significant and make a difference in regards to the GOP? I mean, our rules tell us that whoever comes out of convention gets our attention through the primary. And after the primary, we may have new best friends the day after the primary. And man, I did my job. I stayed the line, and that was number one. But yes, we do have a lot of work to do we have a rules committee that's going to review some of those rules. I've also been talking to the majority leaders. There may be some century code. The legislature may have to look at some century code. I mean, just that kind of work alone, bringing the legislature together and the GOP together, working together this ledge session is going to bring some unity and balance as we work together and really strengthen the party. But that is, again, you asked me, what have I learned? Man, I would do a lot of things different as I look at what happened during convention. But it takes time. I mean, I had to go through that. It was kind of an exercise in learning and learning the processes. But yeah, we need, if a candidate is going to get that endorsement as a party, we're gonna have to look at the rules and some century code, make it stronger.
Well, I was trying to wrap it up because you only gave us 30 minutes and we went over, and then Chad rudely asked another question. So I just want to apologize. Apologize.
Listen, we would have had more time if you hadn't lost your internet because of your, Fort Knox-like security system.
All right. Okay. All right. Fine. Blame me. Sandi, thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Sandi.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
The cold cases you see at the Vault have captivated readers across our region for years. At the Vault podcast, our team of professional reporters takes you further into those stories with new interviews from family members, investigators, and experts. Check out The Vault at inforum.com/The Vault and subscribe to The Vault wherever you find your podcasts.
All right, just finish up with Sandi Sanford, chair of the North Dakota Republican Party. At the end of that, after we went off air, we were saying goodbye to Sandi. We both told her to be safe, and I said it breaks my heart that we have to say that and mean it right now, because it's all so ugly. We need to turn the temperature down. The problem is there's no market for it. I mean, the problem is this is a top-down problem. It's a bottom-up problem. There are vast swaths of the American electorate, left, right, and otherwise, who are just in the market for hating the other side. And
Rob, over the weekend when the assassination attempt was made on Donald Trump, the thing that sort of concerned me the most was my response to it was not surprise.
Yeah.
Right? It was just like, this just feels like
it felt inevitable. It felt inevitable.
And it's just like, it's just waiting for the next shoe to drop in terms of, the violence. And it is both sides. And, it has to get better. It just, if we can't start talking to each other, and we don't know anything about this shooter either. This is just some random kid who's able to do this. I mean, Secret Service needs to do some deep thinking on what happened here, because this is unacceptable.
Yeah, completely unacceptable. And by the way, the profile of the shooter at this point, barring, of course, further revelations, we're going to be learning more, I'm sure, but he's the school shooter. I mean, right. That's the profile, right? I mean, school shootings a lot of times or mass shootings, I should say, they don't even necessarily have to happen at school. They don't necessarily have a common through line, because what motivates them is sometimes it's religious extremism, sometimes it's a political vendetta. Sometimes we just don't even know. Sometimes it's mental illness.
But this didn't seem to have any sort of political activism. I mean, he was a registered Republican, but it donated to a liberal group. He didn't seem isolated. I mean, it seemed like he was. And
the registered Republican thing, I mean, that could have been that he was going to vote against Trump in the primary.
Yeah, for sure. We don't know, but for sure he wasn't some super activist political type.
No. Well, he was 20 years old.
Right.
He hadn't had time really. I mean, but but the things we do know, that he was a loner, that he was bullied, that he felt, what's the right word? Alienated, ostracized,
right.
By society. I mean, those are very common for shooters. Yep. And that's the, he may not have had a political, it may have been nothing more than, I can't seem to get people to notice me and care about me in my life. So if I go and do this, even though it'll be negative and even though it'll end my life, I will gain people who notice me now.
Variety. People will pay attention to me now. Yeah. People will pay attention to me now.
a terrible situation. But then the thing is beyond that, what we get is immediately you have people on the right blaming Democrats and blaming Joe Biden for it, and people on the left, all over the place, either being unsympathetic and say, making jokes that, oh, he missed, he should have aimed better or something like that, which is disgusting, and or suggesting that it was some false flag put on by Republicans to create sympathy.
Right. And yeah. I don't even know how to respond to that. Right. The idea that if the shooter would have been successful, Rob, this country would be burning down right now. I mean, I don't know that we could have, we think things are bad right now. It would have been much, much worse. In this country, in such a dangerous place.
I don't like Jon Stewart very much, but he made a point that we dodged calamity. And I say that, I mean, first and foremost, I'm glad on a personal level, I'm glad Donald Trump's okay.
I don't want people to be assassinated. That's not how we do things.
It is fundamentally an anti-democratic act, small d democratic act. Like it is fundamentally un-American to go up and I'm going to rob voters of a choice. I'm just going to wipe them out by murdering the person, right? I'm going to make it so that people can't follow this person anymore. And, they did it to JFK. They did it to RFK. They did it to Martin Luther King. Even though Martin Luther King wasn't running for elected office. But, I mean, you can go down the list of assassinations. I mean, that's...
Tried with Ronald Reagan. I mean...
Right. They tried it with Ronald Reagan. They tried it with Gerald Ford. It's a terrible, terrible thing. And I hate that it happened. And I hate that. But the other reaction, though, that I've been seeing, and I spent most of the weekend fielding emails from Trump supporters who were accusing me of being all but complicit in the assassination attempt because I am strongly critical of Donald Trump. And I got to tell you, I stand by everything I've said and written about the man.
And that is sort of the problem now, right? I mean, is every contrast that Democrats make or others with Trump, is it going to be, you can't say that because he's going to get assassinated or you're going to motivate. That also can't work, right? I mean, we also have to be able to continue to have dialogue in this country where we're critical of our leaders. That's how we do things here. And we get to continue to do that even though this terrible tragedy took place last weekend.
Yeah, I mean, that's democracy. I mean, it doesn't function. I mean, if the idea is I can't be critical of Donald Trump because dislike of Donald Trump, somebody may take their dislike of Donald Trump to an extreme and try to do something violent. That is also anti-democratic. We have to be able, I need to be able to look at Donald Trump's words and actions, evaluate them, and reach a conclusion that he's not a good person and is not fit for office. And that doesn't make me that just makes me a participant in democracy. That's all that is. And the same goes for Joe Biden.
So Rob, there's a real opportunity here for Trump to bring the country there's one person that can bring the country together right now. I don't think he has it in him to do what needs to take place following this assassination attempt. I mean, he'd have to change his rhetoric, and we haven't seen that up to this point. But I mean, it is an incredible opportunity for him to lead and bring this country together, and not just saying unity. You can't just say unity and then say the other guys are terrible, right? I mean, it seems like there could be something big if he chose to do it.
If he was magnanimous, if he backed off and said, listen, we've all gone too far. We've all cast the other side as not just wrong, but evil, and we need to stop it. And so I'm going to spend the rest of this election, vigorously disagreeing with the incumbent or whoever might be the candidate. We'll get into that maybe in a moment. But I'm not going to hate them. And I'm going to stop, I don't think that's something Donald Trump's going to do. I think it's so far. I think he could do it. And I think it would redound to his benefit. But this is a guy who has gotten where he's at by doubling down on his base over and over and over again. I mean, even up to the J.D. Vance pick,
right?
Over someone like a Marco Rubio or somebody like a Doug Burgum. He's doubling down on his base, and what his base wants to hear is that Democrats are evil.
Or communists, as a state senator in Grand Forks, Scott Meyer, put it. on Twitter recently that all Democrats are communists, and it's again, that's not the way to look at working with people who you disagree with. But yeah, I mean, the JD Vance pick was completely a double down. I mean, this is
by the way, you and I were right. Although I don't know how much credit I should get given how all over the map I was. But
yeah, but I think our last predictions on the last show were both JD Vance. Right. I mean, so I think we take credit. We do a victory lap now, but I think it's complete baton handoff to the next generation of MAGA leaders. Right. I mean, this is about, and if you're Doug Burgum and you didn't get this VP pick and your goal was to be president, this is a terrible pick for Doug Burgum ever being president, because Donald Trump wins. Then you hand it off to JD Vance, who's 39 years old. We're now looking at 8 years from now, and he's getting pretty close to an age where prior to this election, you wouldn't run for president.
Well, yeah, I mean, Doug Burgum is going to be 71 or 72 at the end of the next term.
So then the JD Vance for another term or two, you're 80, it's done, right?
Yeah. So it's. I mean, the one thing I thought that being in the cabinet and not the vice presidency might help Doug Burgum. I mean, the track record of people who are vice presidents getting elected is not very good, although cabinet people getting elected is also not very good. So. Maybe that's nothing, but I was just thinking, being at some remove from the scandal that's inevitably going to emanate from this administration. But you're right in that JD Vance is very, very young and has been put in a position, and we'll see if he can execute, but has been put in a position of being the standard bearer for the next generation of Republican politics.
Yeah, and I also think, thinking about the cabinet as being a launching off point, when, right? It's been a long time. I mean, generations. I mean, the only cabinet member that I can think of right now who sort of raised their profile in this administration is Pete Buttigieg, but he had a really high profile going in. So it has to be the right spot, and you have to, maybe Burgum could use it, but that's tough, because Burgum isn't Pete Buttigieg in terms of articulating a message and that kind of thing. I also think Burgum might be bored being in the cabinet. I mean, running a bureaucracy.
Also, I mean, some of those aren't no-show jobs,
right?
Like if you're the Secretary of Agriculture, you have a lot to do. It's a lot of work, and also a lot of travel, because I mean, we gotta have a big hoopla whenever like a cabinet secretary comes to North Dakota. They're doing that constantly,
right?
And then they travel overseas. They travel throughout the country. I mean, it's a ton of work.
Rob, who's the Secretary of Energy right now?
Oh God, you just put me on the spot. Why am I not remembering?
I don't know either. Who's I do know who the Secretary of Interior is. It's
Deb Hollins.
Yep, that's right. Yeah, but I mean, I'm just trying to sort of make a point here that it's hard for cabinet officials. You think about the Trump administration.
Jennifer Granholm is the secretary. I had to Google.
Oh, we should have known that one. Yeah, we should. We're governor of Michigan. And you think about the first Trump administration, he ran through cabinet officials really quickly. When you think about Secretary of States and some of those.
Yeah, well, look at how many of his former cabinet officials aren't at the Republican National Convention. Look, George Bush isn't there. Dick Cheney isn't there. Mitt Romney isn't there. Dan Quayle isn't there.
Yeah, I don't know that the cabinet is such a great stepping stone for Governor Burgum if he wants.
I know. I was just trying. I don't really think he really has like a strong path anyway. But I will say he has done a lot to raise his name ID. And also, we're in a new era, too, where maybe it doesn't matter. I mean, Donald Trump hadn't held any office ever before.
But had 100% name ID.
Right. Well, that's true. But look at somebody like a Vivek Ramaswamy, though. Who was pretty competitive. I mean, we're starting to see an era where people could kind of come out of nowhere.
But I think your point about what Burgum was able to do between the end of his presidential race and 2 days ago, where he was on the front page of every major political and other things saying he was not the pick. That's amazing that he was able to do that as the governor from North Dakota in a matter of 6 months.
Maybe he doesn't need to do. I mean, maybe we're stuck in old, before times thinking maybe the only thing he needs to do for the next 4 years to have a shot is lots of speeches and lots of cable news hits. Maybe that's it.
Yeah, I think that's the path. I mean, he's obviously not going to want this, but he also needs the Trump presidency, if there is another Trump presidency, to not be great. Because if the Trump presidency is great, I mean, J.D. Vance gets the next nomination, right? I mean, anybody else is boxed out now. So, yeah.
I don't know. I would say that his path to 2028 is exceedingly narrow, but not non-existent.
Yeah, it wasn't. Well, I mean, his path to becoming vice president was nearly non-existent, and he almost pulled it off. His path to be governor in 2016 was non-existent, and he pulled it off. So, I mean, the guy, like, he's a chameleon, and we've expressed frustration about that, but he damn near pulled this thing off.
He did. Let's and by the way, I'm working on getting him on the podcast on Friday. That's a possibility. I don't know if it's going to happen, but I'm working on it. And we'll see. Let me ask you
with guest co-host
Corey Mock. And that's not my fault. You decide when you're on the show or not. Don't get mad at me.
You didn't tell me. That would have been great. Hey, we're gonna have Burgum on, who's almost vice president candidate. We're gonna have you sit this one out, Oban.
Yeah, I did not do that. No, I got Oban's on the A team, right? Corey Mock, definitely B squad.
Wow, we're gonna see if Corey Mock listens to this thing.
Yeah, he's gonna be like, yeah, I'm gonna come on and do this for you now, Port. Now that you're running me into the ground. No, Corey Mock's great.
Yeah.
Let's drill down a little bit on something you said, that at this point, if it asked you a year ago if you thought the Republicans would be more unified than Democrats, you would have said, you're kidding me. Of course they're not. But that's the case, is Republicans are, despite reservations, I think there's still a lot of Republicans who have reservations about Trumpism and everything, but, most of those that I talk to, I'm the exception. I am very much in the minority among Republicans in saying I'm not going to vote for Donald Trump. Most of them, even those who are skeptical or reservations, they're gonna vote for him. They're gonna however they rationalize it, they're gonna do it. Democrats, meanwhile, still have a Biden problem, and it's not going away. It doesn't seem to have. It's not burning as hotly maybe as it was a week and a half ago, but it's not going away. And again, we have a pullout from a group. An organization called Blue Labs Analytics. They went through and they polled candidates. And the thing I don't like about this polling memo is it doesn't have a lot of specifics, but they said that they polled candidates: Arizona Senator Mark Kelly, Maryland Governor Wes Moore, Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. All four were doing significantly better, at least 5 points better than Joe Biden, particularly in battleground states. And also, if you look at other polls in battleground states, Biden is underperforming Senate candidates there, sometimes by 7, 8, 9, 10 points. And part of me, I wanted to ask you this, because I think sometimes everybody focuses on this question of whether or not Biden should be replaced in the context of beating Donald Trump. But there's another factor, is there another candidate where if you can't beat Trump, at least isn't such a drag on down ballot Democrats that could cost Democrats the Senate or maybe cost them ability to take the House? It's not just about beating Donald Trump, although obviously Democrats want to do that. It's also about the down ballot races where, I think Biden's a drag.
So there's a lot there. And the first thing in terms of unity of the Republican side versus the Democrat side, and I'm with you, every Republican I talk to right now, even the ones who don't like Donald Trump, are like, I'm voting for Donald Trump, particularly after the debate, right? I mean, that's sort of where they're at. On the flip side, I think there is sort of this not knowing, I wish we had another guy sort of thing on the Democrat side, but every Democrat I talk to says, I don't care who's running against Donald Trump. I'm going to vote for the guy or woman who's running against Donald Trump. I think the concern that you're laying out here, I don't know how John Tester wins in Montana with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. I don't know how Sherrod Brown wins in Ohio with Joe Biden at the top of the ticket. With all that being said, I also don't know how the Democrats would be able to pass over the first female African-American vice president. Like, I think it's Biden or Kamala. Like, the people you mentioned, I've never thought about Senator Kelly before. I think that would be amazing. But I think it'd be very difficult in today's Democrat Party to try to pass over Kamala Harris and not completely suppress the African American and young vote.
And the memo that they also pulled Kamala Harris.
And she was doing better than Biden.
And she also outperformed. She's also
and so I think that's the only option. Does Kamala Harris help in Montana and Ohio? Maybe in Ohio. Nebraska can't hurt more than Joe Biden at this point. So, my opinion is at this point, this could change in a week. I'm going to be like you with the vice presidential nominee on Joe Biden. I think it's a very, very dangerous proposition for Democrats up and down the ballot to have him on the top of the ticket. Very dangerous and losing everything.
Democrats are kind of in a weird situation too, because they're doing this hurry up nomination of Joe Biden, where sometime after August 1st, but before, I think it's August 7th, because Ohio has like a weirdly early qualifying deadline for their ballot. So, and of course you want your candidate on the ballot.
Maybe not
in Ohio. Well, maybe Ohio's not a swing state anymore. So maybe
maybe Sherrod Brown is like, you know what? Let's just leave that one blank and see how it plays out.
Yeah, maybe. But anyway, the Democrats are gonna have their national candidate on the ballot in Ohio, which means the window for this is 2 weeks. If something's gonna happen, it's got to happen in 2 weeks. Otherwise, Biden's the guy.
He's the nominee. Yep. Yeah, and I also think, the Democrats, regardless if it's Biden or somebody else, the campaign has to be about Donald Trump. This has to be about Donald Trump. The problem Democrats have had since the debate is that people are only talking about Joe Biden. If this election is about Joe Biden, it's not going to be good for Joe Biden. But and the other thing I would say is we have 4 months between now and the election, 3.5 months. Donald Trump has the capacity to do some really, really crazy stuff between now and election day. Will it matter? I don't know. But I don't know where we sit on July 17th is going to be the lay of the land come October 31st.
I think that's right. Because he could very well. I'm interested in seeing how his speech goes. Where, what is that going to? Is it going to be unifying not just for Republicans but for the country? Is he going to sort of? I don't want to use the word capitalize because I don't think that's fair to him. I don't think that's fair to the situation. But is he going to? I don't know. And even learn from it. I don't know what I'm trying to say, but the assassination attempt, and I don't want to make it seem like he's being an opportunist. This is a terrible thing that happened to him. And I would completely understand if it was transformative for him, right? You almost get shot in the head, or you did get shot in the head. Thankfully, it ended up in a minor wound, but I would completely understand if that was transformative for you. If that changed how you viewed the world and you communicated that to the masses, he could do that. And if he does, I think he wins in a landslide. I'm also really interested. We really haven't gotten any polling that has been completely post-assassination attempt. And I'm interested to see what that's going to do. I have a feeling that we're going to be about as divided as ever. If he may see a bump for a while, but I think there's going to be a lot of people out there who think, almost getting shot doesn't suddenly make him a different candidate.
Right. Well, I also think we always see bumps after national conventions, right? I don't know that we'll see bumps in this environment. I think these candidates are so well known that there's not going to be, unless Donald Trump does something like to unite the country, or it gives a different speech than you sort of expect from Donald.
If suddenly he stops being the Donald Trump of the past and becomes a new sort of Donald Trump, where it was an inflection point and it transformed him, and now he's got a very different tone and he's a very different demeanor and a very different approach. I don't think he's going to do that, but if he did that, it's going to be a wipeout if he does that.
Right. Yeah, and I gotta assume he's getting some advice to do that. And if his goal is victory, that's what he should be doing. But it's going to be an interesting couple months here. It feels like between the debate, then the assassination attempt, and then the case being thrown out again about the private documents as well right before the RNC. It feels like there's a different sort of lay of the land changing every day or so in this president. Like there's big things, none to Biden's advantage recently, but it just feels like there's so much uncertainty that it's uncomfortable, I think, for most people paying attention to this.
I saw somebody saying it's felt for a while now like God just decided it's going to be Donald Trump. I mean, the way the stars have aligned. I mean, listen, there's religious fanatics out there who really believe that. I don't. If there is a God, I don't think he cares as much about temporal things as maybe.
He's focused on Major League Baseball and who wins the World Series.
Yeah, he really helped. He really helped Shohei Ohtani hit that home run.
Or Teoscar Hernandez win the home run derby.
Yeah, there you go. There was. We could talk. I don't know what else to talk about. We talked about that terrible national anthem. Well, it turned out she had a drinking problem, I guess.
Yeah, it feels like one of those situations where she did really terrible, and then she might have decided to go to rehab after.
So terrible that admitting to alcohol issues and going into rehab is less embarrassing. Yeah. Other than Grammy awarded artist who performed this way in public.
Did you watch the national anthem last night before the All-Star game?
I didn't. No.
The dude was fantastic. I don't know who it was, some country singer.
That's kind of the thing. Like, you don't notice it when it's really, really good. Right? Like, it's supposed to be good. You only notice it when it's bad.
Hey, Rob, you wrote a column about Jim Casper and being sort of a difficult interview. Yeah. I read the column and I've talked to several people who are like, where's the news here, Rob? That's Jim Casper's interaction with every single person. That was actually a pretty good one. Yeah. Well,
the thing is that where the news is that most people aren't as familiar with Jim Casper as we are. And it's the people that you're talking to, I'm assuming. You got to remember, most of my audience is the general public. Who deserve, I think, to know. And I already I'm getting it, of course he shouldn't talk to you. Nobody should trust you, Port. You're a, why would he talk to the Lion media? And I don't know, like I'm old fashioned. I feel like if somebody asks the political leader a fair question, they should answer it.
It was a yes or no question too. It wasn't like some complicated thing that you could take out of context.
And like the story I wanted to write was that Casper, I don't think is going to seek majority leader. It's going to be Ben Koppelman, I think, from West Fargo. Now, I have not spoken to Koppelman about that yet, but that's what everybody's telling me. And that's actually what I was doing, is I was going to ask Casper and get his answer, and then go to Koppelman and get his answer. And then the way Casper handled it, it became kind of its own story. So eventually I'll probably have a story about who's maybe going to run for majority leader, because that's coming up, not too far in the future. And I do think Koppelman's going to run, and that's going to be interesting to see if he can win. I think his chances aren't nearly so good now that a lot of people who would be ideological fellow travelers with him probably aren't going to, either they're not going to be back in the chamber or they didn't get to the chamber in the first place. But
what do they want from LaFleur? Like, honestly, I mean, LaFleur was the most conservative leader I've dealt with at the legislature. I mean, he was on one of the book ban bills. He was like, I don't know what else he's supposed to do. And if they're counting votes, if Jim Casper lost by 15 votes or whatever last time, these guys aren't going to win this time.
I don't think so. I don't know. I don't know what the problem is with LaFleur. I know a lot of it is, he really kind of came into focus when he called on Nico Rios to resign, which is remarkable that's the deciding factor. You're going to line up with the guy who verbally abused two cops for an hour alongside the road while he was being arrested for DUI. And the problem is that that's like saying the problem with Jim Casper's response is that I asked him the question, right? The problem with Nico Rios' arrest is that Mike LaFleur thinks somebody who behaves that way shouldn't be in elected office. To me, that's the right position. Why did that become controversial?
These are the same guys who stood up for Luke Simons, right? I mean, if these are the things that you're going to stand up for, clearly, again, like we've talked about before, some of these folks just aren't serious lawmakers. And if they're really concerned about policy, LaFleur's been with them on a lot of this stuff.
Well, one of, and I'm forgetting, but you gotta, like, Representative Koppelman not only was he against expelling Simons, who had a lengthy history of harassment in the legislature, and now, we found out earlier this year, certainly has been from his ex-wife and their divorce proceeding, terrible behavior in his private life, terrible abuse alleged there. Representative Koppelman also passed a bill that was designed specifically for a situation Simons was in, which was he had a misdemeanor or something against him, and I want to say it had to do with like a car title or something, and didn't do something right. He had a misdemeanor, but under the law, he lost his guns for a while. And Koppelman, Simons was like on podcasts, like some of those right-wing podcasts of the state that nobody but me apparently listens to, was on there kind of whining about this, and then up pops a bill to address that specific situation from Representative Koppelman. So he's very much from that wing of the party, and they got their butts kicked in the June primary. So I just don't see that that's going to redound to sort of a groundswell.
I don't know how you count the votes and get to a majority.
I just don't. I think it's going to be LaFleur. Also, I've been hearing that Jana Myrdal might challenge for Senate Majority Leader, but she absolutely denies that. It says she's 100% behind Hogue. But that is
I think 2 years ago I thought she was in Hogue's camp too.
Yeah, and she told me actually this morning she is squarely in Senate Majority Leader David Hogue's camp as well. And so I don't think there's going to be any change. I have a feeling that when the legislature convenes in January next year, it's going to be the same two leaders. That's my feeling at this point.
I would agree with the same thing. Like if you're a Republican in North Dakota, why would you, I don't understand I don't love the legislature and some of the stuff they're doing, but if you're a Republican in North Dakota, it seems like
where's the problem?
Leaders are,
I don't love the fact that LaFleur was on that book ban bill, and he's done some things I'm critical of, but I think overall, he's a very good leader. But also remember, even at the convention, it was the District 37 delegates that they were trying to boot out, and that had everything to do with sticking it to LaFleur. So they've just decided they don't like him, and they want him out. But I don't think they're going to get their way. And the dynamics are going to be so interesting between the legislature and the governor's office. Some of that past acrimony under Burgum, I think, is going to evaporate with Kelly Armstrong, who all due respect to Merrill Pepcorn, there is an election, but I don't think Armstrong's going to have any problems there.
Think about, this is obvious, but how much juice is Dickinson and Western North Dakota going to have moving forward with LaFleur, Armstrong, and Hogue? That's a lot of juice.
Hogue's from Minot, which is more central probably than Western, but even so,
it ain't Red River Valley.
It ain't. No, it really isn't. So that's going to be an interesting dynamic as well. Although I have a feeling that Armstrong, I don't sense that he's going to be. But the thing is, from the perception, if you're in the Red River Valley, the perception is if you're not getting everything you want, then someone's pandering to the West, right? That's kind of how that stuff works.
And if you haven't, and Kelly did go to the great university in Grand Forks, so he has a fondness up there. So maybe he'll represent the whole state.
Speaking of Dickinson, some wild stuff at Dickinson State University. Not that I want to go down this particular rabbit hole, but I feel like we're going to have a conversation about this at some point.
We should, because Steve Easton, the president there, his resignation letter and video, just bizarro world. It's just they can't get their crap together at Dickinson State.
No, although I'm kind of sympathetic to the situation he's dealing with. It's a program that doesn't produce a lot of students, and his point is I forget the figure, but it's like $5 or $7 million or something like that on a program that produces 16 students. Okay, that makes sense to me. What do you do about that? Maybe Dickinson State shouldn't have a nursing program. Maybe that should be consolidated with one of the others. Although I say that we need nurses, so that doesn't.
We need nurses. That's the problem.
Either.
And you can't just say, "Hey, nursing faculty, go out and recruit nursing students." And if you don't, we're going to take away your job. We need nurses. We need to figure out a way to get folks into these programs, and making it all sort of Bismarck and East doesn't do the job. But I don't know. It just seems like if it's not one thing, it's another thing at Dickinson State. It's constant.
Yeah. Well, that's a whole other show. Maybe we'll get into that when you come back. Coming up on Friday, like I said, Corey Mock's going to be guest hosting. We may have Governor Burgum We'll see. Still working on that. But other than that,
Rob, full transparency,
yeah.
I'm going on vacation on Friday.
Chad, this is an actual vacation, not me making things up about Chad's work trip so that I can razz him.
Long weekend in Winnipeg.
Long weekend in Winnipeg.
Yeah.
That sounds more like a sentence than a vacation.
Have you been to Winnipeg?
Not lately, no.
I love Winnipeg. Maybe it's just the Canadian. I've been to Canada a couple times in the last year. I mean, eating poutine and talking with the accents I'm looking at property up there when I go. I love the Canadians. I'm not really looking at property for those who think I'm serious, but I love Canada.
Yeah. I've always had, we spent a lot of time traveling when we lived in Alaska, going back and forth to Alaska. We drove through Canada. My grandfather helped build the Alaska-Canada Highway. My godfather used to own Toad River Lodge along the Alaska Highway in British Columbia. Canada's a beautiful place.
Yeah, I was in Toronto this spring to watch baseball, and it was during the hockey playoffs. And there was one night we went to some local bar, and Toronto Maple Leafs were playing in the neighborhood. And we went to some local bar. I was full in Canadian, cheering on a sport I don't really understand. For the Maple Leafs, eating poutine. I mean, it was just, I could live that life.
I don't understand sometimes, because I think it's political, because they have their politics are maybe sometimes a little to the left of ours, and maybe that rubs some people the wrong way. Canada's a great place. And by the way, Canada's always been a great ally. Every time America's, gone to war, World War I, World War II, I mean, our Canadian friends are right with us. I mean, they're wonderful neighbors, and it's a wonderful country, and they have
last time I was in
countries.
Winnipeg, I saw flags going after Trudeau in the same way that people go after Biden. It's like, oh my gosh, it feels like home. It feels like North Dakota.
Canada's just America, just a little bit different.
Yeah,
I was gonna say Canada's like Costco America, but that's mean. I don't want to be mean to our Canadian friends. Canada's a wonderful place. Don't get me wrong. And what I said about Winnipeg, I haven't been there in a long time. I'm sure it's lovely.
What if Winnipeg cancels us because of you going after them like this? I mean, maybe
they're not going to let you. They're going to listen to this podcast. They're not going to let you across the border now.
Well, Aaron would kill you.
Yeah. So what is so great about? I mean, what is it in particular about Winnipeg that you like?
So first, I'm going to an outdoor comedy festival and seeing Tom Segura and Nate Bargatze. So I'm excited about that. But the last time I was there was over spring break, and I just love the way Winnipeg embraces winter. They had so much cool stuff to do, and the people were so nice and very diverse. And I don't know, maybe I'll hate it this time. I don't know. Maybe I was just in the mood for a vacation the last time I was in Winnipeg.
Yeah, I usually vacation in my living room is how that happens for me.
Or Fargo.
Or West Fargo.
Sorry.
Not even. It was Costco Fargo. No, I'm kidding. That's terrible. West Fargo, also a lovely community. Don't get me wrong. I'm trying to be funny, and I should realize that I'm not that funny. Okay, we have
West Fargo is to Fargo what Mandan is to Bismarck. That's what we'll say.
Oh, don't. The poor people of West Fargo getting compared to Mandan.
Oh, I'm not touching that one either.
Okay. We are definitely getting canceled after this, and someone's gonna say, "Port, you live in Minot." What are you doing?
Why not Minot? I can give you a list of reasons why.
The Magic City. I love Minot. It's my home. And hey, everywhere is home to someone, and you don't ever have to be sorry or apologize for loving your home.
Enjoy the state fair.
Yeah, thank you. All right, we're gonna stop. We've gone on way too long. We're hemorrhaging listeners by the ones and twos because we didn't have that many to begin with, brother. All right, we're gonna go. Thank you so much for listening. We'll talk again.